Yeah. And I'll just give one little nugget here. Here's how you know you're not charging enough. When someone continually says, "Oh, your prices are really reasonable," you probably could have asked for double and gotten it. I'm not even kidding.
I love when coaches, consultants, and professional service providers want to do big things in their business. They want to rise to the top and influence their market and the world around them. They want to have a greater impact and make a more lucrative income. Well, if this is you, welcome to Expert in You podcast, the show where I interview other experts and coaches, consultants, so that they can share their success strategies with you. We're going to talk about marketing and how to close more sales, how to get more premium clients, and how to really build your visibility in the market and scale your business like a boss. If this is you, welcome to the show. I want to ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell right now so you don't miss one episode. Grab your coffee and buckle up because we are ready to give it all to you to help you become the expert and get paid as the expert that you are. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Expert in You podcast. I'm your host, Ann Carden, and this week I cannot wait to interview my guest. Brian Wright is with me, and he is doing some amazing things out there in the business world. He has a magazine, he has a highly successful radio show, and he writes books. He has a lot going on, and we're going to dive into all of that, help you create or monetize content, talk about so many things that you could be out there doing to build your brand, build your business. And Brian has been doing this for a lot of years, and he has interviewed some really heavy hitters in the industry. So Brian, welcome to my show. I'm so excited to have you here.
And I'm excited to be here, Ann. Thank you so much for inviting me. You were on my show. You're a fantastic guest, and I can't wait to share with your audience too.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And I was just so blessed and honored to be featured on the cover of Brian's Ultimate Achievers magazine and have a feature inside and an article inside. And so thank you for that. It's an amazing magazine. We're going to talk all about it. You'll be able to go and get that magazine. So Brian, let's just dive in. Let's start with, what do you really call yourself, and what is your business all about?
You know, that's interesting because I do wear several hats. I would say my overarching mission is to help entrepreneurs get their message out to the world in a much bigger way. It starts with my radio show, which I've had since January 2012. And then I started my magazine in December 2017. I'm also a ghostwriter. I help people write their books. And the beautiful thing about having several platforms like that is you can cross-pollinate and promote. So on my show, I can promote my magazine. In my magazine, I can promote my show. When I talk to my ghostwriting clients or my book coaching clients, I promise them that if we have chapters that are self-contained, those will be included in the magazine as magazine articles. And so it's a great way to get your content out there in multiple ways. And that's how you build a brand, because 1 + 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3, it equals 5 or 6.
Yes.
And when people start to see you everywhere, they think you must be the expert. You have to be.
Omnipresence. That's right.
How can you not be the expert? I'm seeing you everywhere. And you know what? Superfan will buy everything you do. Think about your favorite artist, whether it's someone like Paul McCartney or Elton John or Madonna. If you know they're about ready to come out with a new album, aren't you probably going to at least consider buying it? If you've got a favorite artist, you have more than one of their albums. I promise you that.
Right.
So fan will buy everything. They'll attend your shows. They'll buy your merchandise. They'll buy your tickets. They'll tell everyone, "Oh my gosh, this new song is amazing." That's what you want people to think about you and whatever your niche happens to be.
Oh, so good. So good. And your Success Profiles Radio was just featured on Times Square.
Yes, yes.
He shared that with me yesterday. I'm like, you go. I love that.
Yeah. So it's interesting how that happened. And I'll just share a little stuff behind the stuff. What you do for others for free, they will do for you in ways that you do not expect. There is a specific PR agency who asked me if I would interview basically all of their clients. And I'm asking, how many are we talking about? They sent me a list of over 20 people, and I probably interviewed 25 of their clients. And so they said, in return for your generosity to give all of our amazing clients the exposure that they want and need, we will give you a space on the Times Square billboard. Now, it appeared only once. And I said, do I get a video capture? Because I can't go to New York to see that. I didn't know when it was going to be live. It turns out that it was live yesterday. And they had a videographer there who filmed the entire 15 seconds, and they sent it to me, and then I posted it.
That's
So
amazing.
that was a freebie because I did a lot of work, and it takes a lot of work, as you know, to put on a
Yes.
show. You do show prep, which for me, I've become known as someone who's really, really prepared. I will prepare for at least an hour and maybe sometimes up to two, depending on my guest. And then I do an hour-long show. And then I create my show notes and post it all over the place. So if we're talking about an episode of my show, I'm probably putting in at least 3, maybe 4 hours of time per guest. So it adds up to a lot.
Yes. So you were putting it, so the PR company was asking you to put them on your show, on your
Yes.
radio show, and
Uh-huh.
gotcha. Oh, that's amazing. But here's the thing that just like you said, you never know where those partnerships are going to lead.
Yeah.
You never know where that's going to go. You asked me to be on your radio show, and then next thing I know, you're asking me to be on the cover of your magazine, and now
Yeah.
I'm asking you to be on my show. And that really is how these partnerships can work. And it isn't really planned that way. It just feels right when you do it that way.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why I asked you, number one, because you were such a great guest, and number two, because the thing that you're doing in the entrepreneur space is so needed. People don't have the confidence to ask for high level amounts of
Big
money for
money.
their work. Yeah, and you know what? And this is something I'm continually learning. People will gladly pay for whatever solves their problem.
Yes,
And
100%.
sometimes people will pay whatever it takes to solve that problem.
Yes, 100%. No, I love that. Now, that was such a great thing to be able to share on your show
Mhm.
because I do believe people have so much more value than they get paid for a lot of
Oh yeah.
times, including Brian Wright. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll just give one little nugget here. Here's how you know you're not charging enough. When someone continually says, "Oh, your prices are really reasonable," you probably could have asked for double and gotten it. I'm not even kidding.
Or 3 times, yes.
Yes, exactly. But you
Yes,
know exactly where I'm going with that.
yes.
So if someone gives you that feedback, "Oh, your prices are so awesome,"
Yeah.
maybe it's time to bump up a little bit and see if they're still saying that to you. Because
Because you don't want everybody.
yeah,
Here's another way to tell. I can always tell when somebody says, I am completely maxed out. I cannot take any more business. I'm like, you are charging way too low. If you're
right.
maxed out, you are taking too many people. You're taking
If
everyone.
you double your prices and lose fewer than half of your clients, you are ahead.
You'll still make more money. Yes.
And
And with
spend
less
less
effort,
time.
with less time, with
Yes.
energy. So
Yeah. I mean,
all of those.
preach, right? Preach.
Yes. That's that's okay.
Yeah.
But we are not on here to talk about that. But thank you for sharing that.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Let's dive in. Let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about the Ultimate Achievers magazine. You started that, yeah, you started your radio show back in 2012. But when did you start your Ultimate Achievers magazine?
The first issue came out December 2017, and it
He's
happened
been at this a long time. I'm just
yeah.
launching my magazine. So,
And the
yes.
reason it happened was because I realized I'd been doing all these great shows and I hadn't been repurposing the content at all, apart from just doing a show and posting it.
Yes.
And I realized I was missing opportunities. And so I'll just tell you a quick story about how that first issue happened. I realized, okay, I wanted it to be very content driven. So no ads. Well, then how do I monetize it? Well, my subscribers are paying for it. You know, people buy magazine subscriptions. And so I figured, well, that's something that I could do pretty easily. And I started thinking about who should I have on my front cover? Well, 6 months prior, Kevin Harrington was on the cover of, or was on my show. And
From
so I
Shark
emailed
Tank,
him
in case you
from
don't
Shark
know
Tank.
him.
Yeah. And so I emailed him and I said, Kevin, this is something new that I'm thinking about doing. I would like for you to be on the front cover. I'm not requesting any more time from you. That's really key. If you're asking someone really busy not to spend any more of their time, that's a huge step forward. And all I need are great photos. I'll just repurpose part of the interview that we already did. And 90 minutes later, he emailed me back and said, I'm in. And I got people who wanted to collaborate and submit articles.
Mhm.
So a lot of my content was generated by other people, which was also a big win. And I got the photos from Kevin. And I knew
Mhm.
he would be speaking at an event about 6 weeks forward. And I wanted to have printed copies available to give away at that event and to give to him personally.
Mm.
And so that's what happened. I showed up about a half an hour early. We saw each other in the hallway. We recognized each other instantly. And I said, I have a surprise for you. He says, what's that? And I showed him the magazine. He said, oh, I love being on the cover. I said, I know. And then he said, is this basically a digital magazine and you just print a few out for conferences like this? I said, that's exactly what I do. And he said, well, part of my keynote is about creating digital products. Is it okay if I show this in front of the audience during my talk? Of
Of
course.
course.
And so somebody had the foresight to take a picture of him doing that,
Mhm.
and Kevin Harrington's account posted that on Instagram. And the even bigger thing is I sat in the front row at this event, and before he started talking, he walked right up to me, shook my hand, we gave each other a hug, and he said, "Thank you, Brian." I said, "You're welcome, Kevin." And someone snapped that photo. And if you
I
follow me on
saw it. Yes.
Twitter, X, whatever you want to call
Yes.
it, I guess it's called X now. That is my cover photo and has been for many, many years. It was a very emotional moment for me to see that, because I had no idea someone had snapped that
Uh-huh.
photo until a couple weeks later. And it's my favorite photo in the entrepreneur world for me. So
I
that's
love
how.
that. It's such a great story. But I also want to let's talk about the marketing side of this.
Yes,
Because one thing people don't realize, they might be thinking, okay, well, what's the purpose of all that? Okay, everyone, it is a credibility builder
it
and it
is.
opens doors.
It
But I
does.
mean, it's just like writing a book. It builds credibility. What do you think when you hear someone wrote a book? There's this instant authority, there's this instant
Yeah.
credibility that you have of that person that is an author.
Yeah.
I'll share a quick story about that too. But the other thing it does, though, it now you're playing a bigger game,
Yeah.
and it opens doors that are bigger opportunities. It
Mm-hmm.
gets you better partnerships. It helps you meet better people that are doing big things that, again, can open more doors. And so if you're not doing this, nobody knows about you, you're playing small, you don't have a lot going on, you don't really even look that credible if you're not doing a lot of these types of things.
Right.
But talking about, I know Kevin writes, he ghost writes books. So if you want to get a book ghost written, but I remember many years ago, probably 15 years ago, Brian, I was speaking on a stage and everybody on the stage was an author, and I had not yet written my book. And I can remember how little I felt. Now I had great content, I had great feedback, I got great testimonials, but I remember how insignificant I felt being on a stage with several other, everybody was an author. There were some pro athletes and there were some great people, but I was the only one that didn't have a book. And I felt really, it didn't affect my self-worth and what I knew,
Yeah.
but I definitely felt like I wasn't at the same level that they were with my credibility. And so that's the purpose of all of this stuff, but it also lets people see your expertise.
Yeah. I'll tell you why I decided to write my first book. In 2006, I was in a highly paid mastermind, and Brian Tracy was one of the guest speakers. And so one of the perks was a meet and greet with Brian Tracy. I was the first person in line. I didn't have a book, and so I showed up with one of his books called Create Your Own Future, and we snapped a photo with his book. And I vowed, never again will I show up at one of these things without my book.
Yes. Yes.
So
Okay.
that's
But now
why I
you've written
decided to
so
do it.
many. How many have you written?
I have 10 now.
10 of your own.
Yeah. Now, some
But
of
then
them are
you've also
collaborative.
written books for other people.
Yeah, some of those are collaborative projects, which is fine. It's not cheating. It's still your book.
Yes.
Especially if you're writing more than everybody else is.
Yes.
And the idea was yours, and you're doing all the work to get it published and formatted and edited. So yes, it's your book.
Yes. And it's still going to be in your voice. I mean, they're just doing the basic, all the work, but then you still have to go through. It is a lot of work. I had help with my third book, and it was as much work with the third one, thinking that it would be easier for them to take my content and turn that into a book. I thought it would be easier, but it was not. It was just as much work because I still had to keep editing and changing things.
Right. But the advantage of doing your third one is you know what you're doing now, as opposed to the first one where you're trying to figure out, okay, well, I want it to be perfect, but how good is good enough? Now you know.
Yes.
Just create, edit, publish, market, rinse and repeat.
Yes. Oh gosh, so many things we could be talking about here. There's just so much, but let's talk about, so you've got your magazine, the Ultimate Achievers magazine. Go subscribe to that. It's such a minimal amount of money for the content rich magazine that you're getting. And it really is full of people doing big things that are sharing their expertise. I know I wrote an article, you also had interviewed me, and then you turned that into an article, and I was giving it all away. And in that content. So you can really learn a lot from his magazine. But Brian, first of all, let everyone know where they can go to get that.
ultimateachieversmagazine.com.
Super simple. ultimateachieversmagazine.com.
Yep.
And it's what, $99 for a year or something?
99 for the year or 19 a month. Yeah. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Really, it is.
Yes, yes, 100%. So I really urge you to go get that. But the other piece that I want to talk about is that is how he is monetizing it, because there is expense, there are costs to do these things. It's not free like everyone thinks it is. There's your time, which is more valuable than anything. And so you do need a way that you are monetizing a lot of this stuff. For my magazine that is getting ready to come out here shortly, Expert in You, I am monetizing through advertising, but high-end advertising. So for example, in this first one, Legacy Jets is one of the advertisers in that. So I'm looking for those high-end advertisers, not filling it up with a whole bunch of advertisement, but that's one way that I'm monetizing.
Yeah. And in fact, I have been fleshing out an idea to do a second magazine, which will be advertiser based.
Yes.
For high-end clients. And those are exactly the kinds of advertisers that I'll be looking for too.
Yes, you can I even am charging for people to be featured in my magazine. So if they want to spread in my magazine, there's a charge for that. And then I'm adding my podcast. So that's another way I'm monetizing. And so, but Brian, I've seen people monetize where you're a contributor and you're paying a monthly fee to write articles. So we're giving you ideas here. There are so many different ways that you can go. There's no right or wrong. It's really what aligns with you and your business, but you should be monetizing everything you are doing. I just FYI.
And here's the thing for me too. I let people contribute, but I will also say that most of my contributors are paid subscribers. I tell people it's not required, but it would be very highly appreciated.
Yes.
And because they're paying for it, they want to keep contributing and seeing their name in the magazine. And it's great. I mean, I've had people, I've got one particular person who's been in every single issue since I've started.
Well, that's very cool. Yeah, that's great.
He's a good friend of mine, and he's always been super, super supportive. And so always appreciate people who are very willing to help and support. But and it's a great way.
It gives great content. Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes people ask me, does the content have to be original? I said, well, don't plagiarize from someone else. But I mean, if you publish this piece somewhere else, I don't care. I'm not picky, but some publications are very picky. You must write us an original piece with their nose in the air. I'm like, if it's great content, I'll take it.
And by the way, this all helps SEO too. It all helps your SEO for your business or when people are searching. All of these things are, the more you build out that digital footprint and all those digital assets, it just keeps building your brand. They just build on top of each other. So I love that. Let's talk about your success profiles of radio, because that is pretty high up there, right, Brian?
It is a top 1% show. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. In fact, most podcasts don't go beyond maybe 7 episodes, and I've had over 560. In fact, I'm taping an extra show today with someone who's been hard to get. So I made a commitment to tape it other than on Monday so that I could get this person. So
Very cool.
Yeah, he basically founded one of the PR agencies that sends me a lot of guests. And so they really wanted me to interview him. And I said, sure, you've given me a lot of guests. I guess I'll interview your founder too. Right. So I'll do that. I have no problem with that. So over 560 episodes. They're all hour-long shows. It's live radio. There are commercial breaks. Most of the commercials are stuff of mine. And then the station, they reserve the right to keep 1 or 2 ads for themselves to cross-promote their other shows on the network, which is fine. But it's great. And one thing about radio advertising, people don't have the patience for it. They think if my ad appears once that people will just start flocking. No, they got to hear you way more than one time.
Right.
You can't go from 0 to I will spend hundreds of dollars with you in just one ad. They have to hear you over and over and over again.
Yes.
And so for people who think that they're going to make a lot of money by selling ad space on their podcast or radio show, good luck if you can, but mostly no. And so a lot of my guests become paid clients. And that's where I monetize my show many times over. So the whole game of people who think, I want, if you're gonna be a guest on my show, I want you to pay because I have expenses. We all have to pay to do our show somehow.
Right.
It's your job to pay for your show, not your guest.
Yeah, I think that is one perspective, but I do think that it could be the other way too.
It could be. In
Yeah,
fact,
it's whatever you want to do, right?
in fact, John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneurs on Fire, he gets 1 million downloads a month. So yes, he can definitely get
Yeah.
away with charging people
Well,
a
and
lot of
if you
money.
look at Lewis Howes, I think, I don't know if it's still this, but I had heard a while back it's $50,000 to be on his podcast,
Oh,
School of Greatness. And
yeah,
so, there are lots and lots of ways. There's no right or wrong here.
you're right.
It's what aligns with you, what feels good to you, how do you want to build your business? But it is
Yeah.
important to know too, none of these things are free.
No, they aren't. And to your point, pay to play is real, and sometimes you should.
Yes, I agree. And I have paid to play, and I will
Mhm.
tell you, it has come back to me tenfold to do that. And
Mhm.
sometimes when you pay, you actually get really incredible results from that because they maybe do have, a big following or whatever. So you have to look at it and say, does this make sense?
Right.
Just like with anything, right? Is this a
Yeah.
good decision or does this not make sense for me and my business?
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. All right, we talked about all of this. We've talked about ways to monetize some of this. Let's talk about books. You ghostwrite books. How did you get into ghostwriting books?
Well, I've always wanted to be a writer, so I knew that I was going to write. I didn't always know I was going to be writing for other people, but I taught at a 2-year business school in Nebraska. And one of the subjects I taught was English composition. And there were two courses. One was just writing like short papers, like 1,500 words or less. And
Mhm.
then English Comp 2 was you spend the entire 6-week term writing a research paper, complete with brainstorming sessions. You better bring a draft of something that day so that other people can critique your work and give you ideas. Because if you don't bring a draft of what you've done, you totally miss out and you're so far behind the curve. But then I realized if I can help people learn how to write term papers that are, maybe 15, 20 pages long, why can't I help them write their books too? My first client was a coaching client, and he said, look, I don't have money. You don't have a portfolio to show people. Coach me for free and I will do you a testimonial. Great. Sometimes you have to do your first one for free as
Yes.
proof
Or
your
for
work.
very little. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I
Yeah.
did my first one for free, but I charged after that. And of course,
Yeah.
I charged way more than I did 6 or 7 years ago when I started, 8 years ago now when I
Mhm.
started. But it's because I've gotten pretty good at it too.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
offer people an opportunity to be on my show once their book is done. And I've also told them that I will repurpose content from the book into the magazine, which, I mean, very few other writers will offer putting your book on many of their platforms
You're
in
right.
addition to, and I also promise people will get 50 copies of their books. So you get something tangible
Mhm.
for your experience to give away or to sell.
Right. That's great. No, and all of those things are value adds too. And
Mhm.
even my magazine, and I know you kind of mentioned this too. My magazine, I actually am putting my clients in it to
Mhm.
help them elevate their brand and be
Yeah.
seen as an expert. And so that was really my main reason for wanting to launch it is to give them a media platform
Mhm.
and to really get them in print. And, we also do expert books, not like what you do, Brian, very different. These are more
Mhm.
lead generation books.
Mhm.
But the whole purpose of that was to give them a platform and help them be seen more. So
Mhm.
I love that you do that and you use all of that as a value add to your business. That is another way to really leverage all of these assets that we're talking about. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool that you and I do some of the same similar things, but we're different. We do. And we have different ways that we're leveraging it in our
Mhm.
business. So cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how to maximize some of these things from a marketing standpoint, Brian. I know you really talk to people about repurposing their content, how
Mhm.
to really leverage these assets. Do you want to share some about that?
Sure. I'll tell you what, when I do a book, I will repurpose my content in the promotion of my book. So, say, for example, I want to do a bunch of Facebook Lives
Mm-hmm.
following the launch for several weeks. I can pick one idea out of chapter 1 and do a 5-minute Facebook Live. On day 2,
Mm-hmm.
I will pick one idea from chapter 2 and do a 5-minute Facebook Live. And when I get done with the book, I will start over and pick a different idea from chapter 1. You can go on for weeks doing that, and you might think, well, gosh, aren't people going to be tired of hearing about it? The algorithm doesn't show you everything I do.
Right.
It just doesn't. In
You
fact,
only
I've
get to
had
see a
people,
percentage, like a 1
yeah.
or
In
2%.
fact, I'll
Yes.
have people tell me 2 weeks later, oh, I didn't know you did a book. And they're on my friends list.
Right.
So it just depends on the people who you interact with most will see your stuff most often. And I think that's the
Yeah.
goal behind their algorithm. But do that. Do Facebook Lives where you're having other people interview you about the book. Write
Hmm.
magazine articles based on the content in your book. Speak on stage about the content in your book. In fact, if the event planner is willing to supply a copy of your book to everyone in the room, ask them if they'd be willing to buy a copy of the book for everyone in the room at a discount. Now, sometimes they'll do that, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll say, well, you can sell your book at the back of the stage, back of the
Hmm.
room, and whoever wants to buy it can, and then you charge full price
Right.
because you're
Right.
signing the book too.
Right. Now, another thing too is also if you are a paid speaker or you're looking to get speaking engagements, you
Mhm.
can use your book as a value add. You can use it as an upsell where you can
Yep.
get paid bigger speaking fees, but you can also use it a lot of times as a value add and actually get selected as a speaker because now you're willing to throw your book in for everybody.
Mhm.
And then that makes their event better. And
Yeah.
so you'll get the speaking gig. So those
Yeah.
are some little tricks.
Always make the person who brought you in a hero. Always.
Yes, always. 100%. I love this. So good. These are kind of little tricks of the trade and little behind the scenes details
Mhm.
that maybe a lot of people don't know until they sort of get into this world and they start doing this. One of the things, Brian, let's talk about some of the hangups people have with some of these things and some of the problems. One of the things that I see is they think everything has to be perfect before they do any of these things. For example, that book just has to be so perfect. And you can always write a second and a third. And Brian's written 10 of them. I've only got
Yeah.
3, Brian. You are way ahead of me when it
Yeah.
comes to the whole book thing. But
Or if you want to revisit your first book and you have extra things relating to that topic that you want to add, just create a second edition and just don't sell the first one anymore. That gives you a chance to fix all the mistakes that you found the first time.
there's a good nugget for everyone too. Yes, I love that. But yeah, you can add to that. How many books? Some people are on their 5th edition of a
Yeah.
book because they keep doing that, keep going
Yeah.
back, sort
Well,
of
Jack
rewriting.
Canfield, The Success Principles, he did a 10-year anniversary edition and he added 3 more chapters. And that's when I interviewed him, was when he did the 10th
Oh, there's a
edition.
smart idea. I love.
Yeah, create a 10th anniversary edition and just add a couple bonus chapters, 2, 3 bonus
Wow, I
chapters.
already missed that with my first book. I think my first book came out in 2010, so I missed that. But 15 years is
15
coming
years is
around.
coming up. There you go. Add 2 or 3 bonus chapters. And if you see anything that you absolutely did not like about your first version, fix it.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
people who bought it the first time might buy the updated version. I mean, think about this. Musicians, like, for example, like Elton John has been re-releasing deluxe editions of all of his albums because it's 50 years. And there's always bonus tracks and demos. And the people who bought the first one will certainly buy the second one because they want to hear, what did this sound like before the final version? Or I want to hear live versions of these cuts. You know,
Yeah.
the deluxe edition, the super deluxe edition. People will buy it again. They will.
Yeah. I love that we're talking about this because so often people are they're doing things the hard way. They think
Mhm.
that they have to always be recreating, they always have to be doing things new and different. And you're giving some really great ideas here and strategies to, like you said, really repurpose a lot of the content that you've already created or to do to just really up the value even of those things and level them up, which is
Mhm.
another great way because we change, right? We evolve. I know from that very first book to where I am now, definitely I have evolved in what I do in business and who I help and all of those things. And so there's nothing wrong with, and I always say you should have a book that is relevant to what you're doing right now. And do you
Yeah.
agree with that too?
Absolutely. Absolutely. People love to buy stuff that's topical.
Yes, 100%. And it really shines a light on what you want people to see right now.
Hmm. And if you're writing a book about something that's topical, let's say it's something tech related, tech is going to
Mhm.
change pretty quickly. So it gives you a reason to write a second book, a third book, a fourth book on that topic. And the more books you have on a topic, the more you're seen as an expert on that topic.
That's true. Now, Brian, what are some things that we haven't covered with sort of this whole media piece that you would like to talk about before we wrap this up?
Get on as many podcasts, radio shows, and even TV shows as you can to promote what you're doing. Now, I
Mhm.
was on national TV, I was on the list. Now, the reason I got on the list is because I was part of a high paid mastermind, again, pay to play.
Mhm.
And this producer was a guest. And I got to raise my hand and ask a question. And I expressed concerns about, would someone put me on TV? And he said, the way you're carrying yourself, absolutely someone would put you on TV. And so we connected afterwards and he put me on the list. And that clip is on YouTube. And in fact, if you go to one of my sites, writeabookforyou.com, it is at the bottom of the page and you can hear a 2-minute clip, my segment. And I talk about 3 things you need to know before writing your book.
Very cool. What are those 3 things, Brian? Let's just share.
Have a topic. That's certainly number 1. And of course, it sounds so elementary, but that's the first thing that people struggle with is, what do I write about?
Right.
Write about what you know about.
Mm-hmm.
Even ask people in your circle, if I was to write a book, what would you expect it to be about? You might be surprised by what they tell you.
Interesting. Yeah.
And you have to have a structure. That's number 2. Have a viable outline.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say, for example, if you're struggling with how do I create an outline, think about this. Let's just say you're in real estate and you represent sellers. If someone has never sold their home, they're in their first home and now they want to sell. They've never sold a home before.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I do this? They have all kinds of questions. Now, the real estate agent or the realtor hears those same questions over and over and over again, but the person who's selling for the first time has never asked these questions. They do not know. So make a list of all the things that people ask you all the time about your topic. That's your outline.
Perfect. No, that's so great. Yeah.
And then number 3, be on a schedule to write. Pick a certain amount of time every day or every week. And if you have to carve out that time, I'm busy, I have my job, I have my family, I have kids. Awesome. Get up 30 minutes early and write completely uninterrupted before your wife, your husband wakes up, before your kids wake up, before your dog wants your attention. Pick 30 minutes, close the door, and do it.
Those are great tips for anyone wanting to do that. And it's so important. So many people start books and they never finish them. Right. They have a book in them and they never get it out. They sit with all of that stuff. Yep. And look, here's the other thing that we did not talk about. We kind of alluded to it a little bit when we were talking about you can create a 3rd edition, 4th edition. But with the age of digital books, we have the option to do that now. You're not having to order 5,000 books to keep in your garage anymore to be able to get your book out there. Things are print on demand, and it's changed the game in the industry, for authors and
if your book is on Amazon, that's print on demand. You don't have to have inventory unless you want to.
Correct. I always keep some inventory, obviously, and I know you do too. Sure.
Yeah, and you can even buy author copies on Amazon. It's a lot cheaper, but the drawback is you'll probably have to wait, 2, 3, 4 weeks for your author copies because that's not top of their list.
Yeah. But you have that option, and that hasn't always been the case back in the day.
Right.
Before we had all of this digital gold, I should say. We didn't have those options. So good. All right, Brian, I know people right now are chomping at the bit. We shared where they can go grab your magazine. Do it. He has interviewed some really big heavy hitters. We didn't even go into name dropping here, but he's interviewed a lot of people. If you've heard of this little show called The Secret, Brian has interviewed a lot of people from The Secret, John Assaraf and Sharon Lecter. And so there a lot of big names that he has interviewed. But Brian, how about your radio show, Success Profiles Radio? Where can people go and hear that?
They can hear it on Apple Podcasts, iTunes. They can hear it on Spotify. Gosh, you can get it on Audible. You can listen to it on Audible. But if you do subscribe to Apple Podcasts, I would love if you subscribed and left a review. That would mean a lot to me.
There you go. All right. Perfect. Anything else you want to say, Brian? And where would you like to send people?
If you have questions about anything we talked about, whether it's writing your book, whether it's putting together a magazine, or how any of these things can be leveraged, and maybe how I can help you, even if it's just answering your questions, callwithbrian.com and you can book a time to talk to me. Perfect.
Brian, this has been so much fun kicking all this around and sharing your expertise. Thank you so much for being here and just really being so open and even giving tips and secrets that a lot of people don't know. I really appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me here.
You are welcome. All right, everyone, have an amazing week, and I cannot wait until the next episode. So go connect with Brian, book a call with him. He is just number one, a wealth of information. He's been at this a very long time. I only have experts, you know that, right? So he is an expert at everything that he's doing, and you can learn so much from him. I've even learned so much from Brian since I have gotten to know him. So go get connected with him. And thank you so much for being here. Make sure you subscribe to the Expert in You podcast. We're trying to get this show to the top 1% like Success Profiles Radio. So subscribe to the show, and then sharing is caring always. So thank you again. All right. God bless you, everyone. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.
If you've enjoyed this show, then I want to invite you to check out a free automated webinar where I show you how you can bring in ultra high fee clients for $25,000 to $125,000 or even more. I show you how you can do this maybe even in the next 7 to 60 days. So if you want to check out that free webinar, just go to expertinyouaccelerator.com and I'll see you on the inside. You have an amazing day, and until next time, God bless you. Go rock your business.